In 1947, a Polish Jewish survivor named David Ben-Gurion sat in a room in Tel Aviv and made a list. Not a list of grievances, not a list of demands. A list of everything a state needs to survive when every neighbor wants it destroyed before it finishes its first year of existence. Army, intelligence service, weapons industry, scientific capacity, and above everything else, a principle that would govern every decision that followed. Israel would never again depend on anyone else for its own survival. Not allies, not international law, not moral arguments made at the United Nations. Nobody. 1 year later, Israel declared independence. Within hours, 5 Arab armies invaded simultaneously. The country survived by a margin that military historians still struggle to explain, and the experience of those first months burned something permanent into the institutional DNA of everything Israel built afterward. Here's the number that makes this concrete. Israel today has a population of 9 million people, the same as Switzerland, the same as Austria, yet it ranks among the top 5 countries on Earth in active patents, venture capital investment per capita, and cybersecurity technology exports. It has produced more NASDAQ-listed companies than any country outside the United States and China. None of that happened despite the conflict. It happened because of it. The same military service that takes every 18-year-old routes the exceptional ones into units where they spend years solving problems that would end careers in any civilian technology company. Unit 8200, the Signals Intelligence Division, has alumni running security operations at Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and hundreds of companies most people have never heard of, but whose technology touches their lives every single day. The trauma of 1945 did not just create a country, it created a machine, and the machine has been running without stopping for 75 years. In 1972, 11 Israeli athletes were murdered at the Munich Olympics by a Palestinian militant group. The world watched in horror. The United Nations expressed concern. Governments issued statements. Israel did something different. It opened a file. Over the next 20 years, Mossad, the Israeli Foreign Intelligence Service, hunted down and killed every person it held responsible for the Munich attack. Not in Israel, in Paris, in Rome, in Beirut, in Cyprus, in Norwegian hotel rooms where, in one catastrophic case of mistaken identity, they killed an innocent Moroccan waiter and then escaped before local police could process what had happened. No Israeli intelligence officer was ever prosecuted for any of these operations. Not one. This is the fact that requires genuine explanation. Not moral condemnation. Explanation. How does a country conduct assassinations across dozens of sovereign nations over decades, occasionally kill the wrong person, and face zero meaningful legal accountability in the international system that supposedly governs exactly this kind of behavior? The answer has 3 parts. First, Israel never officially confirms or denies specific operations, which creates a legal ambiguity that host countries find difficult to prosecute. Second, the countries where operations occur are frequently unwilling to create a diplomatic crisis with a nation that has significant American backing. Third, and most importantly, the targets are almost always people that Western governments privately consider acceptable losses. When the target is someone the international community quietly agrees deserved it, the outrage is procedural. The investigations go nowhere. The files close. Mossad has understood this calculus with mathematical precision since 1972, and it has been operating inside that understanding ever since. In 2012, a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley published a report that confused a significant number of people in the technology industry. The country with the highest density of startup companies per capita on Earth was not the United States. It was not South Korea. It was not Germany or Japan or any of the countries that had spent decades deliberately building innovation infrastructure. It was Israel, a country that had been in a continuous state of military conflict since the day it was founded. The confusion dissolved the moment you understood one fact. In Israel, the military is not separate from the technology industry. It is the pipeline that feeds it. Every Israeli citizen serves in the army at 18. The top 5% intellectually are identified before they finish high school and offered placement in elite technological units. Unit 8-200 handles signals intelligence and cyber warfare at a level of sophistication that American intelligence officials have publicly described as world-class. Unit 81 develops classified technologies that typically appear in the civilian market 5 to 10 years after military deployment. Talpiot, the most selective program in the entire system, takes 35 people per year and runs them through a combined military and advanced science curriculum that produces what one former Pentagon official called the most practically dangerous engineers on Earth. When these people finish their service, they do not go work for established companies. They found new ones, with each other, using the same networks, the same trust, and the same problem-solving instincts they developed in units where failure had consequences measured in human lives rather than quarterly earnings reports. Waze was built by Unit 8-200 alumni. So was the core technology behind Siri. So were the foundational architectures of several cybersecurity platforms currently protecting the infrastructure of governments that publicly criticize Israel at the United Nations, while privately depending on Israeli technology to keep their own systems running. That last detail is not an accident. It is a strategy. In 2016, a Saudi journalist named Omar Abdulaziz bought a new iPhone, installed his apps, and continued his work as one of the most prominent critics of the Saudi royal family living in exile. He was careful. He used encrypted messaging. He trusted his devices. What he did not know was that his phone had been compromised by software so sophisticated it required zero interaction from him to install. No suspicious link, no attachment, no action whatsoever. The software simply arrived, made itself invisible, and began transmitting everything. His messages, his calls, his camera, his microphone, his location updated every few seconds. The software was called Pegasus. It was built by an Israeli company called NSO Group, and Abdulaziz was communicating regularly with his close friend, Jamal Khashoggi. 2 years later, Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and was murdered. A subsequent investigation by the United Nations Special Rapporteur found credible evidence that surveillance of Abdulaziz through Pegasus had directly contributed to the targeting of Khashoggi. NSO Group denied responsibility. The Israeli government, which must approve all export licenses for Pegasus as a classified defense technology, said nothing. This is the part of the story that goes beyond any single murder. Forensic investigations by Citizen Lab and Amnesty International subsequently identified Pegasus on the devices of heads of state, opposition politicians, human rights lawyers, investigative journalists, and activists across 45 countries. Hungary used it against journalists. India used it against opposition figures. Mexico used it against a lawyer representing families of disappeared students. NSO Group maintained throughout that it sells only to vetted governments for legitimate law enforcement purposes. The evidence accumulated by independent researchers told a different story with a consistency that made the official position increasingly impossible to defend. Israel kept approving the export licenses because Pegasus was not just a product, it was a diplomatic instrument. Access to the most powerful surveillance technology on Earth made governments dependent on Israeli approval to keep using it. Dependency is influence, and influence in Israeli strategic thinking is survival. In 1948, Israel was founded with no oil, no rivers, no strategic depth, surrounded by nations that immediately declared war on it. Western analysts gave it months. Arab military commanders gave it weeks. 76 years later, Israel has the most powerful military in the Middle East, the only confirmed nuclear arsenal in the region, a GDP per capita higher than Spain and Italy, and a technology sector that makes it structurally indispensable to the global economy. The country that was not supposed to survive is now too embedded to isolate. This outcome was not luck. It was the result of a specific doctrine built into every Israeli institution from the first year of independence. The doctrine has one premise: A small country with no natural resources and no strategic depth survives by making itself impossible to replace. In intelligence, in technology, in military capability, in diplomatic leverage, in every domain simultaneously. Every element covered in this video connects to that single premise. The assassinations establish that attacking Israeli interests carries a cost no government can fully protect against. The technology ecosystem makes Israel the source of tools that rivals quietly depend on. Pegasus makes governments across the world answerable to Israeli export decisions, whether they acknowledge it or not. The result is a country of 9 million people that functions, in practical geopolitical terms, as a great power. If you've watched this far, you already understand more about the real mechanics of world politics than most people who read the headlines. Subscribe to the channel, and leave one question in the comments that remains with you after this video. The best comment will receive a detailed answer in the next episode.